Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening and watching the Italian American Entertainment Podcast. And I'm your host, Vince Chiarelli. And today I'll be interviewing Frank Casciaro. And Frank has been performing professionally as a musician for many years and is a singer and a bassist, and also serves as the entertainment chairperson and main stage manager for the Ulster County Italian American Foundation's annual Italian Festival. So welcome, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing okay, Vince. How are you?
Pretty good, and thanks for jumping on a Sunday morning with me. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. Like with everything that's going on, this is as close as we can get. So
I
it's
know.
nice to see you this morning.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, it's can't believe it's been over a year since we were together out at your festival. It seems like yesterday. It's crazy how fast this year went. It seems
Yeah,
like
when things are crazy, I think things seem to move a little bit faster.
Yeah, exactly. But so since this is about Italian Americans, I usually start this with where you're located now, but how you trace your Italian ancestry too.
Well, I live in upstate New York. I mean, right now I'm coming to you via Zoom from Woodstock, New York, which is where I've lived for about the past 30 years. I'm from Kingston, New York, which is upstate New York. My family emigrated here from Kansas in the early mid 30s, 1930s. So they my dad's family came through Brazil. They were my entire family's Calabrese. My grandpa was Napolitan. He was raised in Calabria. My maternal grandfather. So my maternal grandfather, he was the shoemaker here in Woodstock for about 30 years, from sometime in the late 30s to the mid 60s. The other side of my family, my grandfather's family immigrated from Italy to Brazil when my grandfather was a boy. He was born in, I think it was 1889. And he was raised in Brazil. They moved to Kansas. As you know, Vince, because you're from the Midwest, right? There's a lot of Italians in the Midwest, but a bunch of my father's mother's family had settled in the New York area. Both my great uncle and my great aunt on my dad's side were both bar owners locally. They both had very popular, establishments, not only for restaurant bars, but they were catering halls and catered to mostly Italians. So my family settled in upstate New York at that point, and this branch has been there ever since.
Very cool. Yeah, it's the first time I actually have been to upstate New York is when I came to perform for you guys, and it's beautiful up there. It's definitely different than Manhattan and the city. That was really all I had ever seen of New York. So when we took that hour and a half drive up, it was like, wow, this is a different world up here. It's beautiful. So
it is, absolutely. We had relatives when I was a boy visit us from Kansas, where my dad was born and raised. And he thought the entire state was the city. He
Right.
thought he was just going to see blocks and blocks of buildings when he came upstate. And there's lots of natural beauty. I live in the Catskills. So the Catskill Mountains, the Adirondack Mountains, the Finger Lake region. New York's an absolutely beautiful state.
It is. Yeah, no, it was very beautiful. We, Frank, Tony, and I, we had a great time, the one day we were there looking around. So, but anyways, so what I'm doing with this podcast, is focusing on entertainers, any Italian American in the entertainment industry. But, the one avenue most of us have, especially in the music business anymore, as Italian Americans, to perform Italian music is at Italian festivals. So part of this, I want to start, featuring different Italian festivals around the country that are still going. And I thought of you, especially you're a musician as well, so you kind of fall both sides. So we could talk entertainment and the festival. But so you're a part of the Ulster County Italian American Foundation, which runs the annual Italian Fest. And why don't you tell everybody about your festival? If you guys, what you do as the foundation. I've been following your Facebook page, and you guys, I know you have a radio show, and so you guys are doing quite a bit up there promoting Italians and Italian Americans. So why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about your foundation and the festival?
Well, the Ulster County Italian American Foundation, I think it was around 2015 that Tony Marmo, who you've met, Tony was the foundation president for a long time, and he's the founder. Because the fact that one of the largest ethnic groups, actually the largest ethnic group in Ulster County for a long time has been Italian Americans. We number about 35,000 in Ulster County, which I think is about 16 to 18% of the population. I didn't bring my specs with me today. But Tony said, the ancient order of the Hibernians had a very, very strong Irish foundation in town. And they also run an annual event called the Hoolie on the Hudson, which just draws tens of thousands of people every year. It's usually a weekend-long event. And the Italian Fest had kind of fallen by the wayside throughout the early part of the last decade. The restaurateurs in the Rondout area, which is the waterfront area of Kingston, where you performed for us last year, they had taken over the festival, but it kind of lost its ethnic flair. It kind of lost its cultural roots. It was more of a reason to bring people to the Strand to participate and to share, but didn't have a lot to do with the culture. So when the Ulster County Italian American Foundation was formed, one of the first things we started thinking about was, well, Ulster County, seeing that we have one of the largest, the Italian Americans are one of the largest demographic in the area, we should have our own festival. And we should be in charge of it, and we should run it. So the first year we took it on. It was done on a shoestring because the foundation was brand new. Our coffers were not really that full. And as you know, it costs a lot of money to put on these festivals. They're very difficult. And the Ulster County Italian American Foundation is a 501(c)(3), which means that we're a not-for-profit. So, all of our donations, all the money that we raise, either comes through fundraisers, our festival, or from donations and sponsorships from local businesses and individuals. So in 2015, we decided to do it. It was kind of low key. We had borrowed the stage from the Ancient Order of Hibernians, which they used annually, which is a local stage, easy to put up. It wasn't the stage you played on. Okay. It's kind of a little lower end than that. And the first year we didn't, we always chose the Sunday before Columbus Day, Columbus Day, which I know has become a flashpoint for certain groups that want to point and say, that we shouldn't be celebrating that. But once again, October, for those of you who don't know and who are listening, is Italian American Heritage Month. So there's no better day for us to do it is the Sunday. This is that Sunday before Columbus Day. And I think that's October. We started planning in June for the first festival. We didn't really have a lot of time to throw things together. We had really my first meeting that I did with the Italian Foundation, I think was that April. So we were able to pull together a festival in short order. We had a good amount of vendors, a smaller stage, a smaller production. But we found that we drew about 7,000 people that weekend. Now, we were blessed because we had really good weather. And so as you could see, because since you were there performing, we've been able to grow on that. We've been able to expand on what we've done. And I personally would, being the entertainment chair, I'm going to say I'd like to think that I'm putting on a world-class show at a real local budget, which is what I attempt to do.
Right.
But we've been able to pull in some great talent. And a lot of it comes, like we found out about you, Vince, was from word of mouth, where people contacting us and saying, I saw this young man perform at an Italian Fest, and he was just amazing. Please bring him to your festival. And I'm glad we got to meet that way because you came and, last year you were able to do 2 sets for us, which was great. You played the main stage with a full band, and then did the acoustic set, which luckily I was able to sneak away from the main stage because a little busy that day. And your performance was excellent. So
well, thank you. And your festival, it's hard to come by. I've played many festivals in this country, around the whole country, East Coast, West Coast, all over, and it's getting far and few between, to really find the ones that are sticking to the authenticity of being Italian. And you guys definitely did a good job, especially with the entertainment. The big part of an Italian festival is food and entertainment. And sometimes they hit it with the food, and sometimes the entertainment is country bands, and you don't hear an Italian band. And you guys, you hit it on both, cylinders. You tried to appeal to everybody, but kept it authentic. So that was a great thing that you guys did. So, and I'm sure going to continue doing it that way. So, how did you then get involved in the foundation? Did you know Tony from from before, and it was just a phone call, or how did you guys really get how did you get pulled into this?
I've known Tony socially for quite some time, but I forget where I got the news of that first meeting. It was held at the at a hall, the St. Mary's Benevolent Association, which is an Italian association that's connected to St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church here in Kingston. And they rented the hall, and I forget who told me about it, but it was a small affair. I wouldn't say that small of an affair. Our first, it was either the second, I think that was the second meeting. We had about 50, 60 interested people. Instead of, going to a restaurant and there being a cover, some of the members actually came together and cooked that day. There was a great homemade meal, and we got to sit and talk. And it was at that meeting that we decided, we should take over the festival. We should represent ourselves. The Irish have the Hoolie, which they do such a wonderful job at every year. I mean, it's just, they do several stages, and the draw to Kingston's amazing. And we thought, we need to have an Italian fest since we are one of the largest ethnic groups in Ulster County. So, and the thing is like you said, we were able to hang on to the cultural flavor of what we're doing. We're able to actually have it be a real Italian fest, not just Italian food, not just Italian music, but also celebrating Italian culture, Italian heritage, Italian traditions. And I have to say that comes from a very, very good team that is put together that runs this every year. And, they say many hands make light work. We have, fundraising committee. We have a cultural committee, a membership committee, a vendors committee. We have all these committees that work together with the main theme being how can we show people about our culture, not only bring them down to celebrate it like we like to celebrate with food and drink and each other's company, and to share a glass of wine, share a cigar, share a little espresso, listen to a little music, and talk, because we all know we like to talk, right, Vince?
Yeah, right. Oh yeah.
And the team that we put together is able to keep that whole theme, that whole cultural theme, like alive. And I think that's one of the most special things that it brings. We have Anna Brett, who's been our committee chairperson for several years. She was a retired teacher and school administrator here in Kingston, and her husband is actually very, very involved in the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Her last name is Brett, but her maiden name was Palazzo, So we've got both sides. As a matter of fact, Ken, her husband, comes to most of our meetings and kind of gives us what the Hibernians are doing or how. And because, we all have to use the same space. We all have to, We all deal with the same things. You come and I know you perform at these, but I don't know if you're aware of some of the logistics that go into actually.
I've put on my own Italian festival here in Rockford, Illinois for 3 years. And it's a one day. And so I totally get it, especially, we didn't want to do a 3-day, full weekend. Let's say the guy Benny and I who put it on together couldn't do it this year, of course. But we're like, let's just do a 1-day thing. And it's just like, man, all that effort to go into 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. It's very tough. A lot of people don't realize all the back end work that goes into this. Power and tents and everything, and the health department with all the permitting, and it's a lot of work. So I knew it before, and then seeing the stress on the festival organizers' faces when we're the band there trying to perform, but then now doing both sides of it. I have a lot of respect for all you guys that have been doing it for all these years, and all these old timers too. These 80-year-old men that I still see involved, and they've been doing it since like the 60s and 70s, putting on these festivals. It's just like, man, they have the heart to really keep doing this, and it's great. But it's tough, and this year made it tougher, and we'll get into that a little bit. I want to touch on your personal background too. So you're a musician, and I believe you told me you're a bassist. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Last year.
Yep.
Yep. And so when did you start performing music?
Oh, geez. I started performing when I was about 6. My dad found a piano by the roadside one day. My parents were not musical people at all.
Okay.
It was great. I used to love to go to church with them and hear them sing, because I kind of would stare at them going, "Do you guys not realize that you're not singing in key, right? You realize that you're not singing the melody, right?" I mean, they were bad, but they loved music. My parents were both avid dancers. My dad loves to tell me that the story that one of his first dates with my mom, he took her to New York City to see the Nat King Cole Trio. And my dad would say, Frank, he'd sit in the room and he'd point to the wall, you know, that in the room that we're in, says, "I was that far away from Nat King Cole with your mom, and we were watching him perform." He had a deep, deep love of music. And it's funny, the things that I remember, when I was about 3, he came home with the Beatles' second album. He was like, "I heard these guys on the radio and they got some sound and I really like it." And that was it. I mean, my mom had been playing classical music for me while I was a child, when I was in the crib, because it would calm me, which I find it does the same for my granddaughter, which I have a new granddaughter. So that's,
congratulations.
And my dad found an old thank you. My dad found an old beat up piano on the side of the road, and he brought it home and had it cleaned up and had it tuned. And I started pecking out tunes, and my parents decided they would get me piano lessons. So I took rudimentary piano lessons when I was young. I didn't really go that far. I learned the scales. I learned what chords were. And then in second grade, I went to St. Mary's Catholic School in Kingston at the time. They offered guitar lessons, which I thought was, we're talking, this is I'm going to date myself here, Vince. Okay. This is like 1968. And so I learned guitar. I picked up an acoustic guitar. I learned the basic chords, the not bar chords or anything fancy, but all your basic chords. And then I would say until I was about 12, I put it down again until I picked the piano back up, and started going a little bit further in the piano until one of my brother's friends dropped a bass guitar off with a small Fender amp at the house. I think it was a Fender Music what's the real beginner's model? The
Squire? Fender
yeah,
Squire?
no, it wasn't even the Squire. It was before then.
Oh.
Yeah, this was before the Squire line. Yeah, I'm old. And I picked up the bass when I was about 16, and I bashed around with it in my bedroom for a couple of years. Took some lessons, found a local bass player. His name was Dick Kniss. Dick had worked with Peter, Paul, and Mary. If you'd ever seen, the bass player behind them was Dick Kniss. He lived in a town called Mount Marion, which is kind of between Kingston and Saugerties, New York, which is, right in Ulster County. He was also John Denver's bass player. And I had taken several lessons from him. And he really encouraged me. He said, "Listen, you could sit in your bedroom and bash out songs all day. Play with some other guys. Find some guys and get together." So by the time I was 18, I had found a band. We had put a little thing together, playing mostly original music at the time. I remember it was almost all original music, written by a good friend of mine with the great name of Dickie Dickerson, and who I'm still friends with. He's still writing music. And so we performed locally here in Woodstock at a famous club called the Joyous Lake, which had hosted, everyone from Jaco Pastorius and bands like Stuff to everybody who came through Kingston, through Woodstock, played at the Joyous Lake. So my first professional gig, I'd say that was professional, although it was a benefit. My parents were there, but it was a benefit. One thing I give my parents, let's get back to that, is they were very supportive. When we were kids, my younger brother, who's also if you spoke to us on the air, he does Tutto Italiano, the radio show that the Ulster County Italian American Foundation puts on. And my brother's band would come in after school at about 3:15, 3:30, and they would bash it out till dinner time, which was 5:15 every night. 5:15, the music stopped. We came up, we had dinner, and then my band came in, and we played until about 8. And this went on every day, almost every day after school, every week, and most weekends for a couple of years. My parents were extremely supportive.
Wow, that's great.
So I was about, I would say, I kind of bashed around in local bands till I was about 24, 25. And I had gone to work in my dad's business, and my brother and I decided we would go out and try to give a go at it. So scariest thing in my life, I had to go in with my dad after I'd been working with him and learning the family business for a bunch of years and say, Dad, I got this opportunity. I want to go out on the road. and I want to play music. And I was very afraid. It took me 2 weeks to get up the guts to talk to my father. And my father's reaction was, you know something, you don't want to be 56 and kick yourself in the ass that you never tried. These are the exact words that he used. He said, so go out and give it your all. He says, you can always come back to the business, but you may never get a chance to do this again.
Yeah.
So my brother Paul and I formed a band called The Agency, and we struck out on the road playing the Northeast. We're a Northeast band. So we would play New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut. They were our main stomping grounds. And for about 4 years, we were playing close to, I would say, 200 dates a year.
Wow.
You know, this is when I was told originally, this is what I don't forget, Vince, this is when I was talking to you originally. And you were telling me, yeah, you got into a car to drive 400 miles or 500 miles to play an hour set and then drive home. You know, and I said, yeah, you know, when you're young, that's how we did it, right?
Yeah.
My brother Paul had a 75 Oldsmobile, was it a 98? Put 120,000 miles or 140,000 miles on it in 1 year.
Jeez.
Just traveling. There were stretches where we would do 30 days at a time, and we wouldn't stop playing. And you know, it was a great experience. I was thinking last night, my wife and I were just sitting around looking for something to watch, and we put on the old Talking Heads concert film, Stop Making Sense. Mm-hmm. And I got to sit and talk to her and tell her stories about how we had opened up for the solo projects from, you know, 3/4 of the Talking Heads. Right. That we had gotten to go on tour with Chris France and Tina Weymouth from Talking Heads with the Tom Tom Club. We did a mini tour with them. We also worked with Jerry Harrison and the Casual Gods. Got to meet guys like Bernie Worrell, the keyboard player from Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, these were, when I was in my 20s, this is what I spent most of my time doing. And of course, chasing that elusive, back then it was the record deal, right? Exactly, everybody wanted the record deal. And, you know, we got close. We never quite made it, but I never lost the desire to play. And after we got off the road, I formed a couple of like smaller local bands. We would play, you know, a bit at the local Holiday Inns, do parties and things like that. And in about 1998, after doing that for a bunch of years and playing locally with a bunch of bands in Woodstock, I joined a band called Hot Rod. And Hot Rod ended up being together for close to 21 years. Wow. We're on a little bit of a hiatus right now. We're all getting a lot older. So, but I was able to play with Hot Rod as a weekend band, and even as a weekenders, we would sometimes have up to 70 gigs a year. Right. So it was great. I got to play, and you know, like me, I mean, you know, your entire life is music. I would wish I've had to basically spend a good portion of my life in business, but I prefer making music for people, and we do it because we love it, right?
Yep. It's the same thing with me. You know, my grandfather, my father, they were all very supportive. My grandfather was a musician, as you know, and they both told me the same thing. You know, do music, but always have something in business or something to fall back on. And I do. I'm an accountant and do business. I'm an accountant consultant, and keeps me busy. But you know, just like you, the true love is still music. always chasing that, and it just makes us all happy. People don't understand sometimes, but you know, outside of money, there's always a deeper connection to why we all do this. It really is a calming, stress relieving thing, even though sometimes it's stressful. You know, the run up to I'll never forget, the craziest thing happened when we came out to New York to play for you guys. So we flew in to New Jersey. That was the first time I was ever at Newark, and there's like this monorail system or whatever that you have to take to go to the rental car, and it broke. And we were stuck in the monorail, and unfortunately we had no one to talk to, because the three people, the family that was in there with us, were like from Germany or something and spoke no English. and there was like the call for help button, like you're having a heart attack button, push this button and it'll stop the train. Well, the train was already stopped, so we kept pushing the button, and the lady kept coming on, and we're like, yeah, it's stopped. We're stuck. And she's like, okay. And then just like no one would come on. And we were stuck in there for like 15 minutes with this German family that we couldn't communicate to tell them what was happening. So craziest. So all that stress, fly across the country to play for a couple hours and fly back. It's stressful, but as soon as you get up on that stage, it all just kind of goes away, and that's that's the beauty of playing music, I guess. That's why these guys still do it for 60 years. Rolling Stones are still going, and it's just like they do it. Sometimes they don't need the money, I'm sure. It's just they love it, and it's a deeper passion behind it. So did you have a big Italian American music influence?
I did not. I'll never forget my parents bringing an ethnic album. I think it was one of those albums that you got on TV. Now, granted, all the Italian singers were big in my household, but my father also served in the military during World War II, and my dad was a huge big band fan.
Oh, sure.
So, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey. My dad, strangely enough, was a big Jack Teagarden fan. I don't know if you're familiar with Jack Teagarden, but no. He was a little bit more of a jump blues kind of guy. My dad liked the rockier stuff. He was, I got to tell you something. My dad kept dancing straight almost into his 90s. Wow. I think the last time I saw him dance, he was probably right around 90 years old, 91 years old. So he really, he loved that kind of music. And my exposure to Italian, let's say, more modern classics and the classical stuff came from my own research and from looking into it, and learning about these great singers like Mario Lanza and guys like Lou Monte. My dad was a huge fan of Louis Prima. Loved Louis Prima and Keely Smith. He would never say the one name without the other. Who we were lucky enough to have Louis Prima Jr. on our radio show Tutto Italiano a couple months ago. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I came to hear that music and understand what kind of joy. I mean, Italians are passionate people, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons we talk with our hands, right? That's one of the reasons that my ex-wife, God bless her, she used to refer to us as the loud family. She came to dinner with all of us and she said, "How can anybody hear anybody talk at this dinner table? Everybody's shouting," and so the Italian music, I was able to come into and learn more of my own, especially interviewing these people on our radio show, interviewing the children of these stars. We were able to talk to Deanna Martin, Dean Martin's daughter.
Sure.
A couple weeks ago, like I told you, we had Connie Francis on the show,
which was amazing. Yeah,
which was just the biggest treat, for me to speak to a living legend like that. I got to thank the foundation for allowing me to have this show that I get to talk to these people and listen to their stories, which are so rich.
Yeah.
And so coming to the Italian music through that has been good, because like you said, as a musician, we never stop learning music. You can never stop learning about music because it's infinite.
Right.
And, so I'm glad that I was able to come to learning about, the music of my culture and my heritage this late in life. It was just, I feel lucky to be able to do it. And even though it's once every 4 or 5 weeks on the radio, that I get to sit down and do some deep research and learn about these people and where they came from. And almost all of them are like me, either on a second generation or a first generation Italian. So
yeah. No, it's fun. I'm learning more and more, especially with this show all the time, interviewing people. I learned a lot. I just interviewed Caro Giammarisi, the lead singer of the Buckinghams, the other day.
Oh,
and that's a great story too. And then it came out like we're related through marriage. It's just like, what the heck? How the heck did that happen? Because he's like, he lives probably 30 minutes from me in the Chicago suburbs, and I have a cousin with the last name Giammarisi, and I just brought it up that I'm from Rockford, and then at the end of the show, he's like, "Yeah, I miss my cousin in Rockford." I was like, "Who's your cousin?" He's like, "B." I was like, B's my cousin. It's just like, how did that happen all of a sudden? And so it's just crazy, how all us Italians eventually, come back together somehow, especially if you're Sicilian. I'm 100% and he was 100%. So at some point, it was going to connect. But it's crazy. It really is crazy, all the stuff I'm learning. But getting back into the festival a little bit, in the festival world, a lot of the guys I've been interviewing and musicians, I love asking these two questions to. I don't really love asking, but it's more of what's next for us as a culture and a community, and especially with these festivals. As I've been in the festival circuit now. I started when I was 18, so I'm 30 now. So 12 years. I've been going,
You're
right?
a veteran. You're a veteran at 30.
12 years, yeah. So when I started, there was Italian festivals everywhere, and we were going strong, and playing. I'll never forget, we got into San Diego, the biggest one I ever played, and now unfortunately it's gone. We've played Portland, Oregon 4 years ago. It's gone, and it's unfortunately I'm seeing this trend where a lot of the Italian organizations are falling off, and especially the festivals. And I'm a little nervous, and I want to see what your take is on, especially with this year with COVID. When COVID hit, everybody was worried about, oh, it's gonna ruin Coachella and all these big festivals. And it's like, all right, well, they have money. What people don't realize is Polish Fest, the church fundraisers that you go to, they have those festivals so they can survive to make it that year and try to go into next year. And with this year, it's a halt. At most festivals, church organizations, other organizations, nonprofits, they relied on these one or two events a year to survive. And so are you worried at all about, especially, stick to Italian American, are you worried at all about the future of Italian festivals and, some of these foundations and organizations that do you think we'll be able to continue them, or do you see this trend of a lot of them still falling off, unfortunately?
I have to trace this back to my parents being first generation. Although my mom was very strong on traditions with the family, the seven fishes, Christmas Eve,
Sure.
and Easter being her absolute biggest holiday. She used to make what my mom would call the Easter pizza, that you would have at noon, because you fasted at noon on the Saturday before Easter, and at noon the feast could begin, and
Sure.
That's when we would start. But their parents wanted them to assimilate into American culture,
Mm-hmm.
which is understandable. They were mostly fleeing poverty. I mean, my grandparents were, my grandfather on my mom's side was a shoemaker. My grandfather on my dad's side was a coal miner and a janitor, handyman. He was very handy with, could fix anything. And they wanted their children to assimilate. And I think that culturally that must have caught on to my parents, who spoke fluent Italian, but never taught us children.
Right.
They would speak Italian at the dinner table when they didn't want us to know what they were talking about. It was their
Right.
secret code. And I think that the erosion of the culture really came through our grandparents and the ones who emigrated, their desire to assimilate and integrate into the American dream, the American way of life. Because, like I said, we came from Southern Italy, extreme poverty, and, they saw America as a place to be upwardly mobile. Now, maybe the collateral damage of that was an erosion of the culture for the other generations that started to come forward. And, my daughter, although she wants to visit Italy, she's half Italian. Like I like to say, it's the good half.
Yeah.
I got to say that every time. She's very interested in her Italian culture, but I haven't raised her with that same traditions that my mom was raised in. And of course, she was raised in because her parents kept those traditions going. So one of our biggest goals with the Ulster County, and I'm sure most of the Italian foundations in the country, is bringing in young people,
Right.
bringing in young Italians to help the older generation share what our cultures were, share what our traditions were, share where we came from, share kind of how we are with each other and how we talk to each other, how we interrelate as Italians. And, that's one of our biggest goals. And one of the things, the Ulster County Italian American Foundation's biggest fundraiser and biggest the donations that we give away are scholarships. We provide scholarships to Italian American high school students, seniors that are in Ulster County. They submit essays on what it means to them to be Italian. And they're gone over by, we have a committee that basically goes through, reads all these essays, decides who's benefiting of the scholarship. And we're able to do that. And I got to tell you, it warms my heart when I'm able, this year wasn't able to go to the awards meeting, but last year when I did, to hear these essays that these young Italians, these high school students and they're writing about the richness, and you hear them talk about their grandparents and how their grandparents had kept, the culture and the spirit of what it means deep inside your soul to be Italian. And to hear these young people talk gives me a lot of hope. But, us as the older generation, and I say this is the older generation because I'll date myself again, you're half my age, to see a guy that is half my age that still, fully embraces his heritage, Vince, that's just amazing. I got to say, you give me hope is what I'm saying.
Well, well, that kind of goes into the last question I ask everybody on this show is, what do you hope for Italian American entertainment in general? And especially you see a little more of it because you're on the entertainment side, and the big part of these Italian festivals is how do you find someone that can appeal to the masses but also has that somewhat Italian authenticity without just having an old man up there with an accordion, and a lot of that's great, but nowadays like you said, everybody's been assimilated, and do you want to listen to that for an hour and a half? Probably not anymore in 2020. But do you have a good feeling from what you're seeing too these many years as an entertainment chair of others like me that are younger that are continuing the Italian American side of it? I've been seeing a lot more as I've started this show. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of music. There's, I think, a good handful of us, but what I'm seeing a lot more of now, especially with TikTok, I'm not on TikTok, nor do I want to get on, but especially on Instagram, there's a lot of young, teenage, early 20-year-olds doing a lot of this Italian American comedy right now, and really like sharing stories of how it is to grow up Italian and a lot about their grandparents. And that somewhat gives me a little more hope that even if it's not on the music side, that it's going to continue, that even showing it in a comedic way is going to kind of help it continue. And I'm glad they're putting it down, because even hearing other people like portray their grandparents in that accent, brings back memories. I'm sure it would bring back memories for you. It's just like, oh my God, I forgot about that, or I miss my great grandfather talking that way. So I think that's a great thing. And I don't know if you're seeing any of this, on the music side. I don't really know many that are younger than me, unless you've run across them, which I hope. I really want to find younger Italian Americans that are trying to do this in the country. That's my goal, to get us together.
One of our performers is Andrew Hoban. We actually did have a mini festival this year, but when I say it's a mini festival, we did a drive-in movie, and we basically had an opening ceremony that was very small. It was broadcast. One of our big sponsors is Radio Kingston, WKNY, which is radiokingston.org for anybody that listens to this podcast. And if you're interested, you can go to radiokingston.org on the web. And if you go to the archives, all the Tutto Italiano, the show that we do, the radio show, is right there. And Radio Kingston was able to provide the production facilities for us. Actually, I didn't do anything except we got an older gentleman. His name is Joe DeSarl, who came, and he didn't start singing until he was in his late 50s or early 60s. Joe's in his 70s now. Amazing.
Wow.
But we were able to have this mini festival, which was really, really helpful. But the young man, Andrew Hoban, Andrew's in his early 20s, and Hoban is a married name. He's Italian of heritage, and he's an opera singer, and he is most certainly keeping that culture alive, Italian opera, which is,
sure,
opera in Italian, I guess. I hear operas in German, and sometimes, even though I love The Ring and I love Wagner, don't get me wrong, sometimes I hear German opera and I'm kind of like, man, that's harsh. You know, you hear the Italian, it's
Yeah.
mellifluous, it
Oh yeah.
flows, right?
Right.
So I see guys like Andrew, and then the year that you performed with us, I believe we also had Vanessa Racci, who was on.
Oh yeah.
Vanessa's also a young woman who's a great performer.
Yep.
And then when I spoke to Louis Prima Jr. A few weeks ago, Louis is out on the road doing more of his father's kind of music now.
Right.
Louis had bashed around in a couple metal bands, I guess. You know, he's
Yep.
a little younger than I am. And, and now he's out with a band called The Witnesses, which was the name of his father's band.
Yep.
And he's out doing the big band thing. So I'm kind of seeing, guys like me who really were, looking for that record deal and looking for that whole, typical 80s, 90s thing, going back to their culture, and discovering the joy and what they can bring forth and what they can share with people. Yeah. And, when I see guys like Louis, who's, maybe only 6 or 7 years younger than me, and, people like Vanessa and Andrew and you, yeah, it does give me faith. And if you want my prediction for 2021, I mean, we're recording this show. What is today? Today is December
12th, 13th.
Yeah. So, we have a vaccine on the way. The pandemic, the end of sight to the pandemic is, I think, within our reach. I think everybody can feel it. And like you said, you play music for the same, for your soul, you play same music for the same reason I do, is because when I get on stage, it brings me that calm. It brings me that center. And we've been without that now. I mean, I don't know how you feel. It's got me, I'm kind of not as even keeled as I usually am. And being an Italian, I'm not usually even keeled anyway. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I can be up, I can be down. So I think 2021 is going to bring almost a flood of people not only wanting the entertainment, not only wanting the camaraderie of being together and being close and being able to share things together, being able to hug, being able to shake hands, being able to dance. Yeah. I see once this lifts, that even though we're going to be probably, I'm seeing us locked down for an entire year, right? I don't really see things clearing up before March. Yeah. No. And that'll make it almost an entire year. A year of pent up desire for this, I think, is going to, it's going to be a very busy and a very joyous and a very celebratory festival year as soon as things open back up. And maybe later 2021, we can get to that. And I can tell you that 2021 and 2022 are probably going to be some of the best years for playing that both of us have ever seen.
I think the same. Yeah, I think it's going to be late next year. But I think late next year, 2022 is going to be crazy. I think everybody's just going to go out of their minds and try to go everywhere, every restaurant, every festival, everywhere. They're just going to, because it's a lot. And, it's tough as a musician too. And, these virtual things are great, but it's not the same. You can have the greatest production in the world, and still it's going through a tiny cord like this, and it gets the audio level, everything gets compressed to the point that you don't feel it. You can watch Van Halen on your TV, and it's still not the same. With the best production, you don't feel it in your chest like you're at a concert. It's not the same, right. Especially as the bassist, that. I mean, that's what you're feeling in your chest. You can't really hear the bass at home. That doesn't come through very well. So
let's look at it. 2 speakers or 5 speakers, depending upon what kind of sound system you're listening to and whatever space you're listening to, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's over the TV, are not live instruments on a stage, whether they're acoustic instruments or they're electrified. Those instruments are still moving air in a space.
Right. Yeah.
And when you get into that space and that air is moving, that's absolutely 100% different from when with this stuff. And, I've been seeing a lot of editorials and essays relating what we're going to go through in the next 10 years to what happened 100 years ago after the pandemic of 1918. Mm-hmm. And, everybody's familiar with the terms, the roaring 20s.
Right.
Okay. And there was a reason the 20s roared. And of course, one of the things was coming out of World War One, which, was the First World War. My grandfather fought in the First World War. Nobody thought the entire world would ever be at war. This was ground shaking to anyone who had lived up to that point, and then entering into a pandemic.
Right.
In 1918. So when things finally opened up, the floodgates just were like pulled open wide, and people started celebrating for 10 years solid.
Yeah.
And I see that coming, Vince. I see that coming.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking me how hopeful I am, back to your original question of what's to come, if the floodgates open the way I think they're going to open, this is going to be a great decade, not only for Italian American and other cultural foundations, but for musicians and just for mankind as a whole. Once we're able to come back and experience people close to us, whether they're strangers or people that we're going to find ourselves more grateful, I think. A lot of division has been brought up because of, we're all divided right now physically, socially distanced.
Right.
Okay. You're being told so, no matter where you go, that's division. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's making our divisions as people a little greater. And I think what you're going to find when all this lifts is that people are going to have more empathy to each other. People are going to understand that, well, I don't agree with that person, but maybe that doesn't make that person wrong.
Right.
Maybe they are just looking at it a different way. And what I like to say is, when you listen to the people you don't agree with, maybe you can learn something.
Right.
So maybe what all this is going to bring about is a deeper love and a deeper appreciation of our own cultures, of the Italian culture that we were brought up in, and that we're going to want to share it more. We're going to want to, hey, this is who we are. This is why we like to get together in great big crowds and celebrate, mm-hmm. and have a festival and sit in front of music and dance and clap and laugh. I have a lot of faith and I have a lot of hope that things are going to open up. I read a lot of gloom and doom, but happy news doesn't sell newspapers.
Right, no,
doesn't keep eyes on CNN and things like that. So nobody wants to talk about how this could actually end up being a very good thing. And you got to be down before you know what it's like to be up. So we're all down right now. Let's think, what's it going to be like later 2021, 2022? I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I think late next year into 2022 is going to be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Disney World's going to be packed. Let's just say that more than it already has been. That's going to be a weird thing to see how they constrain that, because everybody in the world's going to be wanting to come there. But
it's funny that you say that, because my daughter, I have a new granddaughter, and my daughter keeps saying, I had Disney World, and first it was 5 years. Now it's 3 years. I'm kind of like, let's keep it like 3 years, at least 3 or 4 years out at this point. Let's let things get back to a little,
It's going to be nuts over there. But before we end it here, anything you want to say about the festival for next year? You guys have anything in the works? How do people find out about anything going on? Website, all that type of stuff, Facebook, whatever you got to share about the foundation, let people know.
Right now, we are planning a festival for 2021. We did it for 2020. We had our first meetings and works. We started to talk about the production. We started talking about the talent that we were going to bring in. Had an excellent Giovanni Barbaro, who handled the vendors last year. He's a vendor himself. And it all came together, and we had to pivot at the end when we finally decided we can't do a festival. And we did the mini festival, which I wasn't able to tell you. The main event at the mini festival was everybody got to watch My Cousin Vinny on a drive-in movie theater at a drive-in. So that's really what we did this year. And so we're going to be planning on a festival. Basically how the pandemic plays out is going to dictate whether or not we can do it. Trying to do a socially distanced festival doesn't make you can't do it. No. It's just impossible, because they're usually wide open events where you can walk in and walk out when you want. You can't really control how many people come in. We are going to be planning on a festival in 2021. And how that's going to shape up, what kind of, what it's going to look like right now, nobody knows, or whether or not we're going to be able to do it. But
Sure.
for those of you who are interested or who may want to come, we're the Ulster County Italian American Foundation. That's Ulster County, New York. We're upstate New York. We're about 90 miles, Kingston, where I was born and raised and where the festival is held, is about 90 miles north of New York City on the New York Straight Thruway, straight shot up to exit 19. And for those of you who are interested in finding out about us, we are the Ulster County Italian American Foundation. You can find us at uciaf.org. And, you can learn about us. You can look at video clips from prior festivals. You can see what we're all about. Of course, if you're Italian and you're listening to this in Ulster County, reach out to us. Go to uciaf.org. Give us a call. Send us an email. Tell us you're interested. Membership dues. I just paid my dues for our family, $60 a year. It's tax deductible. We try to have a meeting a month where we get together and break bread and talk and have a little presentation. So we would like to see as much participation as we possibly can. So, come to our site, check it out, see where that leads you. There's links, there's Facebook pages that'll take you to different places, show you the different events that we're still doing, whether they're virtual. A couple of weeks ago, they just did a virtual trip to Ravello. So it's we're doing things. So even if you want to enjoy some Italian flavor, go to uciaf.org and just start clicking around and do some investigation. And I think it'll lead you to a place that brings you back to feeling your Italian roots.
Very cool. Well, I'll definitely include all those links, the website, Facebook page, all that stuff, and also include a link for your radio show, Tutto Italiano, which is great. I listened to that Connie Francis thing, so that was great. So
I'm on 1 week from today, and I will actually be talking to Ray Monti, the son of Lou Monti.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was going to ask you. I met him last year. He gave me his business card and all that. I want to figure out the best way to contact him because I'd love to talk to him on this show about his dad.
I'm going to be calling him this afternoon about our show next week, so I will let him know, and then I'll connect you to. I'm sure you'd love to talk to him. He's got some great stories. I'm really looking forward to having him on my show next week.
Yeah, I loved talking to him last year. That was great meeting him. So once again, Frank, thank you very much for coming on. I hope everything goes well with the foundation through this pandemic, and you guys, keep going strong and can do that festival next year. And let's keep in touch. And hopefully, one of these days, I can come back in person and talk to you instead of through Zoom. So it'd be great.
Vince, I'm looking forward to that. And thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for letting me talk about the Ulster County Italian American Foundation and our festival. And I wish you the best of luck because you are the hope for the future.
Well, thank you. Now I got my 4-year-old son that's got to continue it. So I'm training him young. So he's going to start out. But well, thank you once again, everybody. Thank you, Frank, and we'll catch you next time on the Italian American Entertainment Podcast. See you next time.